Welcome back. This is a series where we're trying to help other nonprofits kind of figure out the messy details of community development. Today we have Ben Wieseman with us here. Ben, thanks for coming in this morning. I really appreciate you taking the time to kind of talk through some planning. That's the big topic of today, the buzzword of today. So wanted just to start, give us your background. We've known each other for, I don't know, 10, 15 years now. Going back to your days at KPS and before that, I think. So just kind of give us a little history.
Well, I think my road through and in planning right now started for me as an undergraduate. I came out of undergraduate school with a bachelor's of science in landscape architecture. So that gave me a really design-focused background of how to look at the environment. And as landscape architects, we like to say we get to do everything out there in the world except for the actual building itself.
Right.
We get to draw the shapes, but we don't actually do the wall sections and roofs and all the liability pieces. But so that gave it a broad kind of piece to look at across my career. I moved out west, and out there I worked for a small planning and landscape firm. And I really ended up specializing in neighborhood design and development. One of the big projects we started from the ground up was Eagle Mountain in Utah. It was a brand new city that had just come out of the ground. And from there, I transitioned back here to the South. I'm from Montgomery originally, grew up here in Alabama. So coming back to Birmingham, I've now been here for a little over 20 years, just working in this field and in this profession. And I came to Birmingham and worked with KPS Group, another local architecture firm that had at that time planning and landscape in-house services.
Yeah.
And there I really specialized in community planning and comprehensive and city planning. Gained my AICP credentials, which is the American Institute of Certified Planners. And I just started really working across our state, doing countless numbers of downtown plans, neighborhood plans, and comprehensive plans.
All as a consultant for those municipalities.
All as a consultant for municipalities. A lot of municipal work.
Right.
I would say 90% of my work at KPS was municipal driven. And then, of course, we had fee developers who would come and hire us to do the same level of planning work and go through zoning processes and lay out brand new neighborhoods. One of the biggest ones I worked on here in the state was Hillsborough down in Helena. 2,500 acres of planned neighborhood communities. It's still growing and developing today. And it's effectively tripled the size of Helena just in its land and form that it's providing. But the backbone of that project, and it's an interesting one, was a trail system.
Okay.
That idea of connection. And that's what really made that neighborhood spring to life.
Sure. Yeah.
Was just connecting assets and connecting areas. From there, I went back to college and got a master's degree in real estate development, where I began to bring in the financial background, the construction backgrounds, and merge those things together with the design piece.
Kind of the how-to of the why.
Yeah. It really kind of fleshed that out, and that led me into nonprofit work.
Okay.
I spent 7 years with Rev Birmingham as their director of catalytic development, and really focused not only on the Woodlawn neighborhood, but also downtown Birmingham and how those two people from a nonprofit perspective grow and develop.
Yeah.
From there, the last 3 years, I've opened my own company, Place Associates, and I spend a lot of my time facilitating, teaching, and working with for-profit and nonprofit developers across the state and the Southeast to do projects and to get their projects out of the ground.
Yeah. When we contextualize this, the job of the nonprofit in this planning, I think you do some work with another agency, nonprofit, or is it your town?
Oh, yeah. So one of the things I do in my professional career is, and I recommend this for everyone in their professional careers, is find those things that you're passionate about and dive into those service industries where you can.
Yeah.
And so Your Town, Alabama is a statewide nonprofit that specializes in teaching people about community planning.
Right. Yeah.
And so I serve on that board. I'm the vice chair right now. And as the vice chair on the board, my primary responsibility is putting on a yearly planning workshop for anyone who wants to attend.
Okay.
So every year we host 60 people at Camp McDowell, just right outside Jasper in Nauvoo, Alabama. And that environment allows us to do a hands-on 2.5-day workshop with all our participants.
Yeah.
We bring in experts. We have usually 10 facilitators who go through the work with the students, but we start the sessions. The first half day is a little more lecture based. We have to tell you what to expect, how things are going to happen. But then the next 2 days are completely a hands-on workshop.
Yeah. No, that's great.
It's
so is that
living,
open?
learning?
So elected leaders, nonprofit leaders, who are kind of the demographic that would come to?
We stretch across everyone. Typically, we will have 2 to 3 mayors, 4 to 5 council members or elected officials there. And then we'll have just a cross section of local passionate individuals.
Yeah.
Some are business owners. Some are thinking about getting into elected positions. Some are just passionate about learning more about community planning, or it affects their role in whatever company they may be working at.
Yeah.
And so it's a really strong cross section in that 60. So this year's workshop is coming up in April 22nd to 24th.
Yeah.
Registration is live right now. Like we said, we do cap it around 60 individuals. That just creates a good dynamic in the room. And as you're working, as we split you up to do that work, 60 becomes a kind of a number for that workshop.
Yeah. Okay.
But yeah. So if you're interested in getting into community planning, or just feel that passion of creativity, or want to know more about it, Yourtown, Alabama is a great entree into design and planning, and why it's so important for all of us.
Well, let's back up a little bit and let's talk about planning as it relates to community development. Are there principles? Is there a process that you typically go through? Peel back the curtain about, I'm coming into a city to do planning. What does that entail?
I think traditionally we have, and we may have all heard this when we look at organizations and we look at, other planning that we may have heard of, is a methodology called the SWOT method: strength, weakness, opportunities, and threats. And over the years, we've learned, as we do with all things, and things grow and evolve, that is not always the best fit, the one fit all kind of approach for everything, from an organization to a place. And so we've really more adopted to what we use as asset-based planning. Okay, let's start with what's good. Let's build on what's successful now. And so that's the basis of asset-based planning. It's not that we're not going to talk about issues, because in those issues we may find opportunities, but we need to talk about what's good now. So,
do you think that works on any scale? Right. So is that like municipal comprehensive planning function? We can do this same asset-based planning or SWOT analysis, but on the individual nonprofit level, is that something where you would encourage nonprofits to kind of work through that same methodology so that they can identify opportunities and assets that they may be focused on?
So if we think about planning, we'll step back to that larger picture of where planning fits.
Right.
We have these hierarchies of planning products that we've come up with, and our state code requires cities to have a certain amount of planning. Now it's very loose in what it's defined under our state code, but different states have different requirements, and typically every city is required to have a comprehensive plan or a master plan, just to guide development and what they want to see. And that's aspirational. It's vision based. In our city of Birmingham, as an example, we have 1 comprehensive plan. We have 9 framework plans that are then, you're going to take that 1 comprehensive plan and break it down into 9 different areas of a city. Then we have 23 defined communities, which feed under those 9. And then from there, we have 99 neighborhoods.
Yeah.
So then we have 99 neighborhoods that make up those 23 communities, which make up the 9 frameworks, which make up the 1 comprehensive plan. So it's all supposed to be working together from top to bottom across all those scopes and scales. The nonprofit steps into that environment, and they do a lot of the same things that cities do from a comprehensive plan. And nonprofits use a lot of the same vocabulary and language. They have a vision and they have a mission statement of how they're going to execute. And then they have to get into that work. What's their aspirational goals and ideas? And I think where the nonprofit really begins to help a city and becomes that true partner and helps is to engage into that public-private partnership role.
Yeah, sure.
Cities can do them by themselves, but it's really taxing. And there's a capacity issue cities run into very quickly.
Yeah.
So nonprofits help fill that capacity for a city to do that engagement from a public-private piece.
Yeah.
And nonprofits offer a lot of different tools that cities may not have.
So how could a nonprofit get plugged into that process? Like, is it reactive where we just need to sit back and we need to wait for these plans to come out and then we can identify aspects where we can get plugged in? Or are we part of the planning process? Do we get involved at that level? Can you talk a little bit about, I'm a community development organization. I have a strategic area that we focus in, a geographic area that we focus in. Do I start working with my municipality on those kind of framework or implementation plans? What does that kind of interface look like?
I think it can happen a lot of different ways. A good example that we have in the city of Birmingham is the Woodlawn Foundation and Woodlawn United. That's an organization that has a very clear mission and vision statement. They stepped into a physical place within the city where they saw the need and they saw where they could enact change.
Yeah.
And then they have become that partner that's helping to bring that change about. And so that dialogue is happening between them and the city, where the city is setting larger, broad goals. The Woodlawn Foundation is setting community-wide goals in concert with those.
Okay.
And it's a push and pull.
Yeah.
They're having that relationship goes back and forth in those conversations.
And probably a lot of that depends on where the nonprofit is in their kind of planning
organizational
methodology.
structure. Yeah.
So in that case, maybe the city wrapped around Woodlawn's structure, where in other cases, the nonprofit may interface with kind of the implementation side of the planning.
And I think to your point too, a nonprofit may emerge from an issue that's been brought to light.
Yeah.
At the city. So it's more reactive in that system where we know we have this issue and all of a sudden we find passionate people who are willing to engage in that work.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden there's a nonprofit there that has a very specific goal then in mind.
Well, let's talk a little bit about that aspect of it, right? And an opportunity has been identified in the planning process, and then the city is looking for implementation organizations that can carry out the mission. Let's just frame it as, blight elimination. We did an analysis of the neighborhood, and we have these 17 problem properties. Do you see examples of where municipalities might solicit assistance from nonprofits or engage nonprofits to carry out that work? How do you think that relationship would work out once the need is identified?
I think that's where the strength of the nonprofit format really comes into play, because nonprofits have the ability, unlike a for-profit company, to expand what their metrics for success are. And they have a different way of raising dollars, both through grants, through, pure capital contributions, but they have a lot more tools in their toolbox to bring equity in. And they have the same amount of tools in their toolbox as a developer to access debt.
Right.
And so when you start combining those two pieces, nonprofits have a lot more flexibility. Now, cities need a nonprofit that has some very clear, definable metrics for success. So that becomes one of those principles that nonprofits have to pick up on, is that they have to be very clear in their vision and their mission statements. And then not only the projects they want to do, but how they define success.
Right.
So that as they have success, they can celebrate those wins and they can share those and begin to keep continuing to grow others that are investing into them.
Yeah, it's this idea that success breeds success.
Yes.
Right? What advice would you give?
And I think
how do we frame our success and how do we communicate that to the broader audience?
I think small wins is always that easy way to do it. How their capacity is really working out.
Yeah.
And also, we're dealing with people at the end of the day. And so you've got to make sure, and in development, it's a relationship driven field. You have to have a lot of relationships. No one individual is going to have all that expertise locked into their head and can do all those things. So you've got to have a large group to work with. And nonprofits run in the same kind of organizational structures where they need a lot of different individuals.
Yeah.
They have different specialities to step in and fill those roles. So that point of nonprofits engaging in small wins allows them to understand what their organization needs as they grow and their capacity to take on different scale and scopes of projects.
Yeah. So most nonprofits are stretched thin, right? Most people are wearing multiple hats to try and achieve the mission goal. Are there services that they can kind of lean into that could help them identify opportunities out there? Or how do you work with nonprofits? Do you have clients that are nonprofits, and what kind of relationship does that look like? What kind of services are you bringing to the table to kind of help
Yeah.
them fulfill their goals?
So there's two parts to that question.
Sure.
I'll start with the broader one of how do nonprofits engage.
Yeah.
There are a lot of statewide and regional kind of nonprofit partners to help grow and expand those educational opportunities for in-house capacity, and also to provide additional projects and need of support for nonprofits to step into. So there, and that could be Your Town, Alabama.
Okay.
That could be Design Alabama. That could be ACE. Could be Main Street. We have a great program through the State Arts Council in our state. So there's a lot of ways for nonprofits to gain education and to gain project experience and to access funding dollars for projects.
Yeah.
Personally, and with Place Associates, I do have both nonprofit and for-profit partners and clients. And I come in and step in as a role of a consultant. So I add a level of capacity to a nonprofit at that time for a very specific need they may have.
Sure. Yeah.
So if it's a development project or a housing, affordable housing project,
right,
I can help step in and help them do some of those fundamental planning pieces along with the performa and development pieces that are required. So they have a more complete, robust package to share with funders, to share with their debt partners, to go share with the city to gain additional dollars or to demonstrate how a project should move forward.
Well, let's talk about those pieces that a nonprofit might need to assemble, project-based pieces that they can then leverage to attract dollars or to, get municipal input, to fundraise against. What are those pieces that you think would be important for a nonprofit to focus on? I heard you say performa. What is the value of, I guess, developer level information that makes their project real? How important is that to really advancing goals?
It becomes really critical when they want to step out into the private for-profit world and utilize the same tools that those individuals are using.
Yeah.
And you need to have the same level of information they do. So that one, your proposal is market ready and market accurate to the best that we can get.
Yeah.
The other thing the nonprofit has to do that's a little bit different is they're going to have a lot of internal guidance around their values and mission to make sure it's aligned with what the city and the community in their place wants to see happen and being done. So they've got to work it from both angles, and it's got to be demonstratable. The whys have to be there and they have to align.
Yeah.
Then they have to come into the market realm, like you were saying, and say, okay, now we need realistic projections, both not only the timing of the project, who all we have to put on the team, how that team's going to function, what those costs really are, and what that means at the end of the day.
Yeah. So it's pretty sophisticated what
it is.
This has to be put together.
But unlike a private developer, the nonprofit, where a private developer at the end of the day, at some point is always going to be forced to show a profit.
Right.
So they can get to the next project.
Right.
Nonprofits don't always have that as a limiting factor.
Sure. Yeah.
They have a lot more creativity in a way to say, this project's important enough that we should be holding it, developing it for long periods of time, which is something completely different than what a for-profit can generally do.
Yeah.
So there's a flexibility that a nonprofit then gains. And that flexibility can play out in a lot of different unique places, physical places in our city, and also in our different markets, both financially and in the user.
Yeah, I would imagine attracting capital is going to be very dependent on having a realistic plan of what the agency is trying to do.
Yeah.
Really identifying, because, everything we work on, there's always a gap associated with that.
Yeah.
And the more I can identify that gap and really hone in on that gap, those are the dollars that I can start to attract to a project.
And there's a lot of great tools out there that only nonprofits can access. There are banks are required to put money into community projects, and banks are going to be relying on nonprofits to be that lead on those projects. Well, because banks are also engaged with all those for-profit developers going through their standard needs, but they've got pools of money, and these pools and pots of money are out there that really are fits for nonprofits only.
Yeah. Yeah.
And nonprofits can tap into those. But they have to have that same basic information, like you're saying. They have to have real performers, real market data numbers. They have to be backed by a vision and a mission of to why it can succeed.
Right. We're in a framework right now where 6 months ago or a year ago pricing is not realistic numbers. How important is that for a nonprofit to really stay kind of tuned into the market conditions and what's happening externally? Because I think so often we can get nearsighted about, I'm trying to deliver this product and, I have pricing or project planning from 5 years ago.
It becomes extremely critical for a nonprofit. To one, when they step out and begin to look for different partners, that idea that they have accurate numbers is going to be critical in selling their vision and mission and the why of why they're the right partner to be invested in or to take down projects. So that reality of the number is necessary. Also, it's to meet the community that they're working at and to be honest and realistic about what those individuals need. We can see that in a lot of projects we have here in Birmingham. We have definitive needs in these communities that are unique and different across the city. And how nonprofits begin to approach those is really leading with that empathy and curiosity to understand what that end user ultimately is going to need. Is it a affordability range, or is it help in dressing and doing the remodels?
Yeah.
All those kind of factors of just understanding who your community is and who you're serving.
So Ben, it sounds like planning really has multifacets to it. It seems like there's a lot of dynamics, inputs, outputs that really shape this progressive nature of what an agency might be doing in the community.
Yeah.
Like what are, apart from the tangible things, what other things do we need to consider that need to go into a robust planning process?
Yeah. So I think, we've kind of hinted on a few of these in the conversation. On one hand, we've got the organization itself and its overall structure, its hierarchy, it's what it's doing, how it's doing it. And that can be complex in itself. And then at the same time, we've got this physical world they're operating within.
Right.
And even in there, based on whether we're in an urban condition or a rural condition, whether we have utilities in place or not, all of a sudden there's all these different factors that we're layering in. And it all comes down to who we're serving.
Right.
And what do they need? And so it's if we start with the who, that'll get us to the why.
Right.
And then we can start layering in all these things that can be very complex. They're solvable.
Right.
We invented all these things, so we can invent the right solutions.
Yeah.
But you're working on these multifaceted problems. There is no silver bullet solution to any of this.
Yeah.
You've got to work on everything. You've got to be willing to bring the partners to the table. Lots of relationships are required in real estate development, and lots of relationships are required in nonprofits.
Yeah.
So, and you're marrying those two together, and that's, how many people you have to bring into the table.
And it really sounds like there's no period at the end of planning. Like this isn't something that we do. We did it. Now we're ready to be done. This is something that's iterative. It's responsive to the community's needs. It's an ongoing process. So
it has to be.
It has to be.
Yeah.
To be effective.
Because the community is constantly changing.
Right.
The community is constantly has people moving in and moving out, people growing older, new individuals being born. We're constantly shifting the dynamics and the demographics in our places. Our buildings themselves are made from these living things that age and have an investment needs.
Right.
So our neighborhoods and communities are these kind of living cells that we have to take care of, and they have their own multifaceted needs. So we've got to be understanding of that and know that the moment that we're done planning, that gives us that moment in time to begin a project.
Yeah.
But then planning has to continue for the next thing.
Yeah.
And it's changes, and we have to adapt and move forward. And projects don't happen overnight.
Many nights.
Right.
Many
so
nights. Yeah.
We have to start looking at the reality of time in this
Right.
equation too, that this is going to take time, and a lot of things change over time.
And that goes back to the realistic plan.
Yeah.
What's the realistic timeline?
What's the realistic timeline? I mean, we like to tell, developers know this, but we typically know that a developer may start thinking about a project, and that may take several months.
Yeah.
A developer may engage an owner to get control of that project. That may take several months. A developer may then begin to make sure that project is entitled in a way that allows them to do what they want.
Right.
That may take several months. Then they have to design, then they have to build, then they have to lease, then they have to sell. And so all those components then are, is it 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, 10 years? I mean, it all depends on the scale and scope of those projects.
It's hard work. It's challenging work. And I'm glad people like you are out there helping put frameworks that can be implemented against by other agencies and nonprofits. It's such a huge resource to have good planning on the front end that's able to adapt to changing circumstances in the community. So I, just really thank you for coming out and sharing your wisdom. I hope people hear that planning is important, that it's not something
critical
that we just overlook. And
the nice thing, I mean, one of the joys about planning too, at its heart and soul, is community engagement, is having people talk and discuss, to share opinions, to share ideas, and to find solutions to move forward together with.
Yeah.
And that's at its heart, it's that discussion.
Yeah.